All right, guys, welcome back. This is the last. This is the last section, section 1.6, the methodology of economics. Okay, we've come a long way, and I hope you are understanding what we are doing. So this section addresses how economists organize their studies to make economic science a worldwide field of human endeavor. Okay, the methodology of economics. It is how economists organize their studies to make economic science a worldwide field of human endeavor. Now, the first one is the scientific method. Okay, we have the scientific method. And that's why we say economics is a science in the definition given to us by Professor Charles Robbins. Economists adopt scientific method in their investigation of economic problems. Investigation of these economic problems, we use what we call scientific method and economic relationship. So in this method, problems are identified, defined, information relevant to the problem are collected, organized, and analyzed, leading to the establishment of an economic theory, like theory of demand and supply, theory of consumer behavior, theory of production, and all of those theories that we have as a topic in economics. Okay, now that we've gotten theory, what is the next thing? What is theory? I think the next question is, what is theory? Okay, and an economic theory, otherwise referred to as economic law. Theory is also known as law, principle, model. Most of the time you hear law, you hear this one, law of demand, law of supply. So you hear law more. Okay, you won't hear something like principle of demand, no. Theory of demand, law of demand, and all of that. So these principles and laws and models helps to explain human economic behaviors, especially production, distribution, and exchange and consumption. Okay, as well as to predict the likely course of future events. Rational behavior. That's rational behavior. Okay, an economic theory is developed around one or more assumptions. The usefulness of any theory to a particular problem situation depends on how realistic the given assumptions are. Now, assumptions in science, we call it hypothesis. Okay, hypothesis. When you are doing your projects, you definitely come along. You hear this, and you hear this when you are doing your research paper. Now, words, graph, and equation. In economic discussion, three types of language are used. Okay, now that we've gotten theory, the language that we present this theory with is through words, graphical and mathematical representation, verbal statements, graphical and mathematical representation. So what is that verbal statement? The use of words is often the easiest way to presentation. That's the advantage of making decisions in economics available to a wide audience. Okay, so for graph, visual appeal, it's a further aid to understanding economic discussions. Graph provides a clear picture of the relationship between two economic variables. Equation, you have complex relationship, especially three or more dimensional relations are expressed in mathematical language, algebraic statements or functional relationship and all of that. Okay, so that's what the equation, graph, and verbal statement means. So example of verbal statements. If you do this and you write it in Word, that's verbal statement. For graph, just like what we do the other time, if you see something like this, that means there's what? Economic growth. This means economic growth. Okay, economic growth. It could mean economic growth. It could mean shifts in demand. Shifts in demand. Okay, shift in demand. So this graph now represents something depending on what the title. Okay, when you are doing graph, definitely you understand how to plot graph and all of that. But it just, it simplifies the whole process. And for the opportunity cost that we did the other time, B2 minus B1 over R2 minus R1 equals to, no, less than 0. This is an example of what? Of equation. This is an example of mathematical representation. This is not even an equation. This is mathematical representation, because equal sign makes it what? Equal equation. This equals to this, but this is less than, so it's a mathematical inequality. This is inequality. So, limitation of scientific method in economics. The nature of the subject matter of economics, human behavior, imposes limitations in the use of scientific method in economics. Measurement and controlled experiments, which are vital in the physical science, that is the pure science, are rarely applicable in economics, because people cannot be expected to behave as predictably as inanimate matter, which can be subject of controlled laboratory experiments. Okay, so inanimate matter, people that don't have their own mind, you can't use that to predict human beings. Okay, so those are the limitations of scientific method in economics, and I think I've explained it in section 1.2. So the last one that we have is positive and normative economics. This one, you definitely see this question. You will definitely see this question. So what does positive economics mean? What does normative economics mean? Okay, the analysis of economics can be divided into two. Now, we are talking of economics analysis, and we have the positive economics and the normative economics. The positive economics is used to describe the way things are or things will be if certain conditions exist. If this thing happens, so this is what we ought to have. That is positive economic. For example, for instance, the statement, an increase in demand for a commodity will cause its price to increase when other factors influencing demand and supply condition remains unchanged. This statement like this is what? It's a positive economic statement. Okay, is a objective science. It's a positive economic statement. And normative is more of what ought to be or what should be. Okay, what ought to be or what should be. So statements like it is a subjective science which deals with those areas of human behaviors in which personal value judgments are made. Personal value judgments are made. Now, let me give you a clear example. If you say the rise in fuel cost led to okay, let me rephrase that. The rise in fuel costs made transportation costs to skyrocket. Transportation costs to skyrocket. This is an example of what? This is an example of positive statement. Positive statement. While example like this, farmers ought to get quality fertilizer on time. This statement is what is a normative statement. Do you understand the difference now? So based on something that is something that happened, that made something to happen, that's positive. Something that should happen or could happen or ought to happen is what is normative economics. And that's the end of chapter 1. I think you get something. Please go through these videos together all at once and answer the question. Okay, I know I've sent you a question before, but please go back again and correct yourself. Okay, correct the ones that you think you got wrong. Send me the new one after watching all these videos, and I will mark and tell you where the errors are and correct the errors. Have a wonderful day.